Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lead Different. This is where we feature a number of different well respected leaders within our community. Today, we are thrilled for this enlightening conversation. My name is Melissa Yingst with Innivee Strategies. I will also introduce David Gesson, who's here with us today. I will let David introduce himself a bit. To you, David.
Hello, I'm David Geeslin. This is my sign name, DG. I grew up in Indiana. I went to Indiana School for the Deaf, where I graduated. I became the superintendent, and I was the first deaf individual to become the superintendent there. There is a second one from Fremont School for the Deaf now. A little
That's
bit of
awesome.
a little bit about my background. I grew up within a deaf family, so I had access to sign in my family, which I'm blessed to have. I am married. I have two daughters, one granddaughter.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. So I have CODAs, children of deaf adults, and now I also have a GODA, a grandchild of deaf adults. They're all fluent in sign, which is thrilling for me. I've always had access to that, and I'm
Oh,
excited to
yes.
see that in the younger generations.
That's awesome.
So after I finished high school, I was at Gallaudet University for 2 years. I then attended Purdue. I majored in ASL linguistics. I then spent time at Boston University in the deaf education program. And then I went to Indiana University, also known as IU, as part of the educational leadership program. Once I got married, my wife, believe it or not, is hearing, and she's an audiologist. And even worse, she's a speech therapist.
Well, you know, what works, works.
Yep, she never forced me to use a hearing aid or do speech therapy. When we first met and started dating, she said, "Hey, do you mind turning your voice off? To be honest, it sounds awful. Ignore what your parents told you. They're wrong. Go ahead and turn off that voice box, please. You can go ahead and go from there." So that was my family experience growing up.
Oh, that's hilarious. I always think that we need more speech therapists and audiologists to have that type of perspective. It's a realistic perspective. Looks like you found the perfect match.
I absolutely agree. I'll share a funny anecdote about my wife and I. I think it's worth mentioning here.
Go
So,
right ahead.
thank you. We met at Purdue University. She was studying audiology. As I mentioned, I came in studying linguistics there at Purdue University. We started to get to know each other. We started chatting a little bit. Um, and it was said, that audiology has destroyed deaf culture in the past. I was showing her research. I was trying to convince her that audiology is bad, trying to convince her to quit audiology. She didn't want to do anything detrimental to the deaf community. She went to the dean of audiology at the school, shared a lot of the facts that I shared with her, passed along some of that information. And she went ahead and started to change the audiology field. So we met, and the two of us have decided to change the world, and we have thus far.
Exactly. And you know what, David? I've known you, and you are one of those huge change makers in the field of education. I must congratulate you on your grandchild and a huge congratulations to you for your recent retirement as well for the as the interim superintendent for the Indiana School for the Deaf. How many years exactly were you there?
I was there for 19 years.
Oh my. So that's, let's say, nationwide. They truly look up to the Indiana School for the Deaf as the front line of change makers for critical thinking for success when it comes to the educational realm. And that honestly happened under your leadership. So a huge congratulations and our hats are off to you. Now, I would love to dive deep just to hear a bit more about your experience as a leader. I do have a few questions that I would love for to ask you and for you to expand upon as the superintendent.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. I will love to say it was a collective effort. It wasn't just me leading the work there at ISD. We did change the world in the deaf education field. together with the people in our school, the support we got from outside of the school, other deaf schools. It really was collective. CSD, NAD, Gallaudet University, RIT, all of these various organizations really worked together to make it happen, and it definitely was beyond what we could have dreamed.
Oh, yes, it definitely takes everyone. I know that there's been a few different times we were able to chat, or even I was able to witness a presentation, and we really saw that you are a transformative leader. And I'd like to expand on that just a bit. Would you mind telling us a bit of the story of how the Indiana School for the Deaf transform into that bilingual, bicultural program, and what made the school identify the issues and start the change, and what was all involved in said change?
Sure. So I'll start, when I was a child, when I was a student at a deaf school, taking in the world and information. As I grew in middle school, I noticed that there was educational injustice going on around me. Some hearing teachers would come into the deaf school, not very fluent in sign language, very difficult to understand. I remember talking to my middle school classmates that we shouldn't allow this to happen. We shouldn't allow this level of education. And so that started a bit of a flame under me, if you will. I wanted to become involved with bettering deaf education. There were several experiences that I had. Some teachers who used signed exact English that a lot of the students didn't understand. I became a bit of a deaf interpreter for my classmates. The teacher would present on something, the students wouldn't understand it, so I would make sure to repeat it in a way that they could understand. That was a recurring experience for me. Later on, I was taking a seventh, I was taking a chemistry class, and I went ahead and asked my mom, why is the seven here on this worksheet? And so my mom called the textbook company, um, and it said, seventh grade version. And I asked, why are we taking the seventh grade version? I'm a junior in high school. And so those types of things that happened to me really did make me angry, realizing the way we were treated differently in the deaf school. It made me want to be involved and change. I will say the final straw that I had, I'll go ahead and share it. It may seem strange, but I went to a public school for 2 courses. I went ahead and took calculus, one of them, while I was there. And speaking with the teacher, I went ahead and gave an answer. The teacher responded and said that I was dumber than a doorknob.
Wait 1 minute. The teacher said that to you?
hmm
Wow.
And in that moment, I realized, the system is broken. Personally, I'm a systems guy. I love to think about how schools run, how businesses run. I really enjoy reading and understanding the ins and outs and how things work. And so I took a step back and I realized the teacher said that because their view, they don't know that deaf individuals can be X, Y, and Z. Their view is based on what they've heard and what they don't know. I believed at the moment that, teachers had low expectations because that's what they were told for deaf students.
That's valid. That's one perspective.
hmm And at that time, there was conversation as far as should teachers be qualified? Does that mean they should have a deaf education degree? Is the teacher without a deaf education degree better overall? And so all of these things throughout my life really did start that flame, and I wanted to enact change in the deaf education system. So fast forward a little bit, I went to Gallaudet University. They did close or pause the ASL program because of cued speech. And so there was a bit going on. I didn't quite like it. I went to Purdue University. I learned more about deaf culture. I was able to learn more about my deaf identity, American Sign Language as a whole, and learn it at a deeper level. And I really did become somewhat of a madman, if you will. Yeah, I was really on my own journey. I wanted to change and better deaf education.
It ignited that fire. Yes.
hmm So I'm holding up, um, this is a summary of Unlock the Curriculum. I read this. It's specifically about teachers and their expectations and how they treat the class if information is clearly conveyed, various things. And so I this is my life story. It was matching up what I was reading, and I was definitely having a lot of it resonate with me. I also read this other book here, The Deaf Experience,
Yes, the deaf experience.
and this is written by Harlan Lane. This individual, originally, they had worked in Paris in the French deaf school there. Um, I learned a lot about the history and how that was the first bilingual education model in the world, actually was in Paris. And so an individual, I'm trying to think how to spell it. I think it's B. Bain, if I'm getting the name correctly. Um, they worked with Laurent Clerc over in Paris. They also worked with Jean Massue. Um,
Oh, these are key figures in our history.
they are, and so they decided to go ahead and use LSF or French Sign as the bilingual model with French. And so Gallaudet was able to capitalize on that and use the bye-bye model here in the United States. And so there really is just a lot of history and a lot of things that I was able to learn while I was thinking of my own ideas. And there really was so much going on in the landscape. It's almost like it was in the air that we breathe.
It's in our surroundings. Yes.
Exactly, empowering, having the first deaf president, I. King Jordan at
Y-
Gallaudet University,
Yes, deaf president
shifting that
now.
power, taking over the deaf schools. And so that palpable energy really was showing up all over the place around that time. And I did realize that it is time to really enact change and transform deaf education. So when it comes to our deaf schools and how that actually happens, it's quite interesting. The director of instruction, also known as DOI, they did make an announcement that all textbooks would be grade based. So, a third grade math book in a public school would be a third grade math book here at the school. And there was a lot of pushback at the time. I want to say it was maybe 97% hearing teachers, teaching the deaf students at the time. And so a lot of staff pushback. And as superintendent, I went about showing them how to sign various concepts that are in the higher level textbooks. I realized that a lot of the teachers didn't have the jargon, they didn't have the vocabulary in that subject matter. No wonder they wanted to teach at a lower level because that was the vocabulary that the teachers were able to produce.
They were
Therefore,
quite limited.
exactly, that's what became their curriculum, and that was lowering the level of education. No wonder. And so I realized we need to change it from there and start from the beginning. I went ahead, like I said, and got my linguistics um, degree. So I took an ASL course for the first time, a K through 12. I went ahead, oh, excuse the interpreter. I went ahead and enacted ASL program in the school for K through 12 students. This was the first time that had been done. And so we were trying to go ahead and transform the school. The kids would need that. And the staff as well would need to have better signing skills.
Yes, that is vital.
So we went ahead and developed the ASLPI standardized testing.
Yeah,
Uh,
evaluation, testing.
and so that only gives, levels 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. At the time, a lot of teachers, in the deaf schools had signed and they may be there for 30 years or so, and they were, conversational. They, at that point, you can't make them test in. It sounds a little ridiculous. So I would rather have a diagnostic service. So really go throughout it with conversation and, oh, maybe that person has weak cardinal numbers. Let's go ahead and make resources to fit what their specific needs are. Maybe another teacher doesn't have great science jargon. Maybe they know a lot about science, but maybe they don't know a lot about sports. And so we really customized it to make sure that we were filling in the gaps of what folks needed for each individual. It was very successful. The staff loved it. Teachers loved it. It was more of finding people where they were at. Everyone really was in a different place. It's almost like an IEP for teachers or
Oh,
for all
yes, they were
staff.
able to bring it all in. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And so the next year I went to a new job for ASL assessments. I did a lot of development there. I had my ASL linguistics background. I was testing kids, looking at their strengths, their weaknesses. At the time, there were no standards, there was no curriculum back then. We were kind of just going at it with what we had. There was a lot of reaching out to colleagues at other deaf schools, seeing what they were doing, seeing what we could use. We realized that, we would need to have, a service with public schools, deaf schools, and have someone go around and sort of collectively establish this. And so I was a full-time presenter plus analyzer plus providing workshops and things like that. The following year, I moved and became principal. The elementary school, as far as I saw it, hadn't become fully bilingual. Like I mentioned, I'm very much a systems guy. And so I went in as principal, started to enact change, have things be a little bit more deaf centered, make sure that deaf professionals were paired with hearing professionals more often. And we were having some success there. I did notice, though, however, that there were barriers, and people are well intentioned in general, but there were some issues. And so it needed to start from the top, from the superintendent, because we wanted to be able to take off all of the log jams and go faster. And so once we did that, we were able to transform. The in between time, I will say, I do want to mention, and maybe I'll talk about that, I guess, at the next question. As far as technique and leadership technique, maybe I'll hold off on that.
Oh, yes. I'm sure you actually dealt with a great bit of resistance or even those questioning, because when it comes to change, it can be a stark move for many people.
Hmm.
Now, when we talk about your transformation, the bilingual, bicultural program, and the philosophy within itself, in your purview and transformation of the deaf schools around, having them to lead with that philosophy, what type of principles would you recommend for those leaders?
Recognize the people in your school, recognize the group that you're working with. I would say don't place blame on individuals. There's often system issues, and everyone's on their own journey. Everyone's often working hard, trying to, they go into good deaf education programs. They pay a lot of money, and they spend a lot of hours studying and really investing in their knowledge that they take with them. Having that relationships with students. A lot of teachers have very successful stories, but often the mindset that they come in with is quite archaic, and there's a lot of new research that has proven this. So we do have to talk about how to go alongside someone and say, all right, you've done a lot, you've done it a certain way, it's time for change. And the reason is we have to remind them it's for the students. New research has shown, data has shown. At the time, again, there wasn't a lot of data when it came to the bye-bye model, but it was kind of all about intuition and guts and just realizing that something needed to happen. We needed to put things into action. And so
Yeah,
definitely I would recommend do it. The data that we had was small, but do it anyway. We had to be the first one. Somebody had to just go ahead and do it. I would say again, it wasn't just myself. There was another school as well that started doing it at the same time, and it really took off from there. I would say it starts with the people. There were some deaf individuals, deaf professionals at the time who, didn't necessarily, they weren't proponents of it. It was mostly hearing individuals, but there were some deaf as well. I
really.
I don't have this book with me, but it's called um, Making the Transition. It's a business book. It's from the business world. It's a model there as far as how to make that transition and maintain strength throughout a transition phase. And so as I was reading it, um, I took a lot from it. Ann Titus, I give a lot of credit to. She's an audiologist who started out at ISD with David Reynolds, a teacher there at the deaf school. Ann Titus recognized that for something new to happen, a hearing individual can't always be the one leading the way. A hearing individual should be going about right behind and supporting a deaf leader. It should be the deaf individual up in front making the decisions and having that say. So at the time, I was reading that book. Dr. Bridges wrote this book called Transition, and there's 3 phases. So there's the end phase, In the middle, you have the neutral phase, and then you have the new beginning phase. I gave a lot of presentations on this content. I'll sum it up a little bit. So, when it comes to skills, some people say, there's teachers who maybe aren't fluent. And so you need to have them let go of their past, their investment that they've made. You've done a good job, you have the degree, let that go. Talk about it, grieve, uh, you know, definitely process what the individual feels as far as having the deaf individuals come up front. Now it's always been hearing run and hearing led, and so it's a big change that needs to be grieved. And it's about treating deaf colleagues and professionals with that respect. There were some issues that we had as well with some of the individuals who were part of a union, but it really was important to go ahead and identify all of the issues. We did somewhat of a brick wall concept, lots of activities that were hands-on, how to be able to support them and how they could support us, and ultimately for the kids and the students' needs, how we could go about doing that together as a team. Again, the letting go and acceptance, it's almost like getting into a new boat and sailing away from the island that you come from, your home, the beach that you love, and sort of seeing what's familiar fade away. And, reminding them that we don't always have the answer.
Right. You just have to do it. Dive in.
Exactly. And so that can be difficult. We talked a lot about how it's okay throughout a process like this to feel lost. It's okay. Identify why you feel that loss. And then moving into the neutral phase, it's okay not to know everything. Whatever you find there in that middle kind of neutral zone, it's good to observe and notice whenever something new is working. If something that you're doing in the neutral phase is working and it's a positive experience, you can move it into the new phase, which is the new normal. And again, you're letting go of things that aren't working. So it's kind of a trial and error, experimenting, taking what works for you, leaving what doesn't. It really was a fantastic experience. So I would give updates every once in a while, as far as what they were working on, what the deaf school was doing. Sometimes the hearing individuals and deaf individuals work together, sometimes separate. At the time, definitely, it was important to have specific support groups to provide those safe spaces and be able to work together. And it wasn't, again, that we were telling anyone they were doing anything wrong. We were just doing it for students and we needed to change.
Yes, because it's a learning process.
Mm-hmm. I must shout out George Staley. He was the superintendent at the time during that, well, it was first Iliard and then the second superintendent. It was a very short tenure, but, hats off to him. And then George was for the next 11 years. Definitely helped to, calm things down. And the individual, George was definitely affirming that we needed to change. A lot of the hearing staff was pushing back and providing a lot of opinionated opinions, but they were letting them know that the train's gone. Essentially, the old way is out the door. We have to move on.
Yes, there's new documentation, new information.
Exactly. And so, time changes, you got to move with it. I do want to thank George for that work that he did in advocating. The tools, as far as talking about the process, the human process of change, I would say in the end, it paid off absolutely beautifully. Well, I was going to say a bad example, but okay, true story. Let me go ahead and start with this. So, like I said, I worked there for many years as a superintendent. We never had a sign on the wall that said, you must sign. This is a signing zone. We never did anything like that. It was a process, and it was by talking with people and convincing them. We got to a point, where I had a teacher that we had hired 3 years prior. They were hearing, and I didn't know until 3 years into them working at the school, because they were just using ASL as their mode of communication on campus. A lot of hearing teachers didn't know that they were hearing as well. They were respecting that space. This land on campus, it's ASL country, if you will. So what's wrong with using ASL?
Right. That's touching. Wow. That is special. I know so many schools out and about, they'll have a sign that will say, "Hey, sign please." And that is honestly a large discussion for many schools, not to have the sign there, but everyone to just follow due to access. That's rare. Now, you've mentioned a lot about learning things and different elements. Before I jump on to the next question, I think you were just about to add something.
Yeah, I will say, a lot of parents said that they were confused as to seeing that the secretary for the school was deaf. The audiologist, they knew that they may not be able to sign very well, but they were shocked that the audiologist was fluent. The school psychologist, absolutely fluent. And so speech therapist as well, the whole staff, I would say, there it didn't really you wouldn't be able to identify who was hearing or deaf because everyone was signing. And so it was a blessing for a lot of parents. Often the parents, students would come and be moved to tears. It felt just so accessible. It felt like it was their home.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, with all of that in mind and everything that you've mentioned and just going and jumping in without specifically knowing what to do, really having that risk, but leading with intuition. Obviously, you've been wonderful with picking up information as you move along and courses that you've learned. Everything has made you that amazing leader. You also mentioned that there are other key things. I do know that the energy is going to be one. You have to work. You said almost 2 decades. That's a long time, 20 years. That energy, that motivation, it has to last. I just want to know, how do you maintain that energy or that motivation? I know there's probably been some moments that you've just been exhausted, encountered difficult situations, but what kept you going for almost 20 years? I must know.
Mhm. I would say it's about, being passionate about advocacy. That's who I am at my heart. I'll mention Paulo Fier, like I did earlier. Very much passionate about advocating and empowering people. I got my PhD not because, I wanted something about myself. It was because I wanted to change the system, and I did. To be superintendent, I only did that because I was trying to advocate more effectively. In my principal position, it was trying to drive change. And so it starts again from the story I shared when I was younger and my observations and the fire that I had lit under me. I felt like my work in the community was not quite finished. I've always felt like there's more to do. The last 2 years, I do recognize that the bye-bye model is definitely um, stronger than it was before. I do think organizational health is important. My emotions, my feelings, I probably could go on another 10 years, but that's not the point. For an organization to be at its strongest, you do need to change leadership from time to time for the best growth of the organization. And so I will say, important to set aside ego. It may be hard, but take a look at what's in the best interest of the school. And I've always loved the school more than myself, if you will. And so recognizing that, I decided to step aside, let Kim Claus in, a great leader. I'm very excited for her, the first female superintendent of the
Oh, yes.
school. And
I'm looking forward to it too.
yeah, she's been doing great work and definitely providing to that school strength. It really has been incredible to see her work. Um, I do appreciate it. And looking back, we have transformed the world. It's unbelievable when I look back to what I thought about as a child, the conversations with my classmates, the things we were upset about. Various people doing various work in various places have made it all happen.
Yes,
And
exactly.
it's just so exciting. It's the 175th anniversary. We went ahead and set up, a potluck situation, and folks were able to get up and share a little bit about little nuggets from their journey and how they contributed. And so it was beautiful to see how everyone contributed together and they were able to recall certain things, or maybe they had a negative experience with someone, but then they were able to bond and they've become lifelong friends. It may be hearing individuals, deaf individuals. There were lots and lots of stories. And so at the end, I got up there and said, you wanted deaf people to take over the school, and we are leading the school now. We did it. At this point, it's
Exactly.
it's not about always having a deaf leader per se. It's just deaf centered and having an ASL community. I know that there was a time where it was more specific to be deaf led and ASL, but it's, the ASL community needs to take over the school as a whole and just have it be deaf centered, whoever it is. Similar to, some African American students are able to go to a specific school to be more successful. There's some school for women where women are in leadership and they can succeed. And so, similar to that, I feel great. And there definitely will be challenges, and there are challenges still, but uh, definitely I feel celebratory. Uh, a lot.
Well, wonderful. Yes, that is definitely something to be proud of. Your success as well as the legacy that you are leaving behind. And I'm really excited to see what Kim will do within her leadership time, what things she'll be able to get established for the Indiana School for the Deaf, and where we'll move towards in the future. Now, is what is some of the best advice that you have received when it comes to leadership? And how did that impact your leadership approach?
So Frank Trusk, um, his presentation that I watched when I was an eighth grade student, I remember thinking, wow, I want to be like him. His stories, looking at the glass half full, being positive, watching the Weather Channel, it's mostly sunny. Have that positive outlook no matter what's thrown in my path. I think that's really stuck with me. Keep going. He believed in people. I would say there's no I in team. That's definitely something that I believe in. I think that the collective becomes important to me. I think in a collective manner, during that time, like I mentioned, I read the Paulo Freire book. I recommend it strongly. Definitely talks a lot about liberation, poverty, the power dynamics between different classes. Some of the kids weren't able to read and write, so they didn't know the legal rights that they had. He came in and felt passionate about empowering them. And, this country has a constitution, we have laws. I'm not going to teach you just to read, Jane and Dick are running, they have their dog Spot. I'm not going to teach you these childish things. I want to start with the Constitution. You need to know these important things. And so what I've learned in that book has definitely stuck with me. Um, you need to remember who we're here for, and it's the students. I want deaf students, to be represented well. I want to provide them, and I want to provide them with what they need and make sure that they're representing our community well. Self-determination is important. It really is a culmination. Again, I'm very much of a collectivist.
Yes, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. I read a lot of books. I know I've been jumping around a little bit, but um, a Native American ideal is to respect your elders. If a decision can't be met peacefully, then you wait and you talk about it again. And so, again, I very much think that the collective approach is the way to go.
Essentially, not rushing. You're not jumping just to make a decision for the sake of making a decision. You want to sit back, take a moment, check the pulse. And that honestly is a good way to get community buy in for that transformation. I
Mm-hmm.
think I like where you're coming from. Hmm.
Definitely. And if I can, I'd like to share another story. So there was a budget cut,
Yes.
2 million. This was a while ago, maybe 17 years ago now. They announced that there would be $2 million cut from the budget. Definitely a whole ordeal. We were trying to figure out how to solve it. I started thinking, all right, what can we do with the status quo? What do we have? What have we had for many years within our budget that no one maybe is really taking care of? So, for example, the teacher's position for an athletic director. It's really difficult to find. Well, let me say, I guess it's hard to find an individual with a teacher's license. Maybe there's someone who is a better candidate, but maybe there's ways we can rethink it. Um,
Yeah.
the
Mention some
facility,
limitations. Yeah.
the facility supervisor over in the middle school dorms, high school dorms, elementary dorms. Maybe we could, combine things instead of having the old buildings tell us how to structure and provide the programs. We tell the buildings what we need them for, and so we pulled all of the ages a little bit closer together, making sure that everyone was safe, but we could provide it with less staff, less supervision, because we were able to overlap some of the services. And so we were able to then provide 11 more teachers' aides to the elementary school.
So
We had to
being strategic. Mm.
exactly. And so we called an emergency meeting for the admin team. Some of them were on vacation. I was on vacation. I had Airbnb. Well, I guess Airbnb wasn't around at the time, but I had paid for my lodging, and so everything had to be canceled. We all got together in this emergency meeting. What are we going to do for this 2 million? We went ahead and got out a big whiteboard and we wrote down this rule. We wrote down students, comma, parents, comma, staff. The ASL community will not feel the cut, period. And so we went ahead and we were really just spitballing and writing down ideas and brainstorming, talking about what we could possibly do. Wednesday morning, we got together, we met what we needed to. Everyone was able to go back on their trips. The budget was approved. And then we, and I did share with the community. I was very transparent about the loss in funds.
Oh, yes, definitely transparency. Wow.
hmm we had a meeting every 2 months usually, and so I set up um, 5 phases. The cut happens at phase 1, and then phase 2. We went through the whole process of what to expect, and we included parents in the community. We had a lot of town halls to be able to inform and communicate what was going on. I asked everyone a little bit later, does everyone really feel the difference? And a lot of people really said the environment felt the same at the school. And so that's what transformation is. There's going to be some impacts, but what can you do to mitigate? Some of them are necessary, some of them are good. You just have to adapt.
Yes, and
You
that's
know, make,
tough.
exactly, making lemonades out of lemons, essentially.
Yes, that is difficult. A $2 million cut, that has to be shocking trying to maneuver your way so that everyone doesn't feel it. Wow. I know a number of schools could probably benefit from that advice with everything that's happening in the world now and so many cuts that are happening. It's our new reality. So thank you so much for your words of wisdom.
hmm Unfortunately, a $3 million cut today is, you know, completely ridiculous, but it's like taking out the bone marrow out of your body. We're just skeletons, but I'll leave that conversation for another time. I know Kim will do a great job with that cut. She'll make the community stronger and stronger. She's not going to let funds define who we are or how good our program will be.
Yes, yes, I agree. I agree. I agree. So, one last question. Leading different. What does that concept mean to you?
Sure. So if you're familiar with Steve Jobs from Apple, he is famous for the quote about thinking differently. He would always talk about that. When it comes to status quo, you can go ahead and buck that. You don't need to stay with the status quo. Status quo is the enemy of progress. You can always be better tomorrow. You can always think of a solution that maybe you haven't thought of previously. Challenge your team. I would say, for me and my admin team, I had 30 people. And so I made sure it was important to connect and to challenge each other. And in the end, we would come to decisions together. It was beautiful. You do have to analyze your team and really be honest about who you're working with. Maybe it's time to change people out. You have to be able to have those honest conversations so that you can move forward with important decisions. And so, yeah, I think that's what it means to think differently. Don't be afraid to look at it from a different angle, reframe. Reframe, I think, is super important as a practice. Make sure that you reframe things when you can.
I think that's a good word to throw out. It's August, everyone is coming back to school, things are back in session. So that's a good word to take to heart as we move forward through the school year for success. Thank you so much for your time, for your comments, and I can truly feel your passion and your energy through the screen. It is just permeating. Ah, goodness. Thank you so much, David, for being you and for all that you do for our community in deaf education.
Of course. And thank you to our community for making it possible. We're nothing. Hello. What does it mean to lead different? Something to think about. If you're curious, You'll have to look into the history of how Indiana School for the Deaf became a bilingual model, and we enacted a lot of transformation. There were different challenges we had, and it's all doable. I encourage you to tune in, to watch, and think different. I also want to mention that